kind of feeling a little bit emotional. This is the last, or the penultimate at least, off the bull. It is the very last edition of The Last Dance. Episodes 9 and 10 launched over the last 48 hours. As ever, Ronan Mullen is here, Kieran Donaghy is here, and Jarlath Regan is here. Of course, the first episode of An Irishman Abroad, Inside Basketball, is also here. Make sure to get onto that after you listen to this episode of Off the Bull. Pat Burke is Jarlath's first guest. But yeah, I think let's just start on this note that we've kind of all agreed on, that it immediately feels like we're missing something from our lives, that every Monday afternoon we'd hop on here, have a chat that went on for way too long, watch a documentary that actually now seems way too short, and there is a sense of emptiness, and the whole lockdown doesn't help any emotion you're feeling at the moment. But I think it's genuine, real nostalgia, melancholy, and a little bit of something missing now.
Yeah, there was definitely something missing from our lives going forward. You know, it was just something. So it was something we'd anticipated for so long, and we didn't think we were going to get it till after the NBA finals in June. And then all of a sudden we hear we're getting it in /April, May, and everybody's excitement was ramped up, along with obviously the restrictions that are in place now. People can't go anywhere. There's very little live sport, no live sport to look forward to up until last weekend, and yeah, I think this was just what you wanted, and something to get you through the last 6 or 7 weeks, and to give us a further insight for us that love the game and would have known a lot about these stories, but still you were learning little bits of new stuff that you didn't know all the way on. But I think this has been remarkable for people who maybe didn't have a clue about Michael Jordan really, or maybe a small idea of Michael Jordan, maybe remember him from the time of the Olympics, but wouldn't have taken much notice of the NBA. I think for those people that have watched it, and talking to a lot of them that I meet, they get a real sense of appreciation, and I think almost getting more than what we are getting out of it. We're getting the nostalgia and the look back, but we already knew he was the GOAT. Whereas I think a lot of these people are kind of looking at it, kind of going, "Yeah, this is amazing, this is brilliant," and it was just fantastic from start to finish. But as I said, I think the people that wouldn't be such basketball heads, I think, have a serious kind of insight into the guy Michael Jordan and that team and what he meant to the city of Chicago.
Yeah, it's been unbelievably universal, the way this has been watched over the last few weeks. A good ending, Jarlath?
Yeah, I think a really fitting ending in some ways, that essentially the story is of a thing that was beautiful and great and universally loved, that ended too soon in an unsatisfactory manner. And that, for me, is exactly what happened with this documentary. Number 10, massive letdown. Do I hold it against them? After everything they gave us, after everything Mike gave us? No. But goodness me, it made me wonder if when this all ends, when we actually are back at our desks, would it be possible to convince Jason Hare to make number 10 again without all the stress of, as Kieran said, getting it together real quick so that we can have it while we're in lockdown? Because lads, if you correct your child's homework, you can always tell the answers that they did at the end. The standard goes down, and I just felt this number 10 just didn't have the same care and attention and density of detail. Goodness me, if you go back to 1 and look at exactly how many just clips, just actual raw clips were included, it doesn't match up.
So that's it. It's to do with raw footage and an absence of that in episode 10 that lets you down.
Among other things. I'm happy to get into them over the course of the chat. But I guess people are tuning into this having watched it. And we all know, like, if you're tuning into this podcast, you've followed the journey. You've built a relationship with Jerry Krause, Jerry Reinsdorf, Scott Burrell, and many, many others. And I really didn't, like, do you remember the end of Top Gun? When they play You've Lost That Loving Feeling, and they cut to everybody's face and give you just that moment with them before you wave goodbye to the thing that you loved for the last little while. We deserved that in relation to Scott Burrell, Randy Brown, Judd Bushler, Luke Longley. Like, come on, he's such a huge gap in this. You obviously can't cover everyone, but you have covered some people. And to not even mention the fact that Jerry Krause died, which I am abundantly aware of, and David Stern passed away. I was just like, really? That's the ending? I was like, what? I was kind of looking around going, you just wrote the lines across the screen of who got traded and who got released. I was like, maybe I'm alone in this, guys, but I was a bit like, come on, you can do better than that. We know you can do better than that. We just watched 9 episodes better than this.
What do you reckon, Ronan?
Yeah, I agree that the postscript left a lot to be desired. It's a bit like that Oasis documentary, Supersonic, where they kind of sign off before they get into where Oasis fell down, and they did the same thing here. Just as you think they're about to delve into what happened next, they just kind of close the curtains on it. But it's interesting, and it's no coincidence that episode 10 felt a little bit rushed, because it was like they had to conclude it. Jalen and Jacoby have been doing a piece with Hare after each week, basically, and he's basically said that the last 2 episodes have been in production for the last few weeks. They've been concluding them via Zoom, you know, kind of putting the finishing touches on it. And while I'm sure they had the broad strokes of that closing scene with Jackson and putting all the notes in the fire and all this kind of stuff, in terms of piecing it together, as Jarlath said, with specific bits of footage, I'm sure they would have loved to have been around a whiteboard and kind of conducted that a little bit more seamlessly. So if it does fall down a little bit, that's probably why, in terms of the fluency. But as a piece of work, like, just to cast your mind back to that first week when you hear Eric B and Raheem with that opening montage as Jordan as a rookie, having not seen sport in so long, and the nourishment of that for me. Then fast forward to now, that was one of my favorite moments, just from like, what a piece of television. But
yeah, I'm spoiled rotten. That's the truth.
Yeah, but
you
then
spoiled me now.
Through to Steve Kerr in this week, like to bookend either side with a very different piece, but also one of my highlights. Like, if there's a best supporting character award, and I think Steve Kerr is probably going to bag that, because that was one of the most incredible 10 minutes of television. A story about his father, which, like, I think it was when the Warriors won their first title and he was walking around Arkle Arena with TNT, and he kind of covered all the brushstrokes of it there. But the way they put it together here, like, it's just brilliant stuff. Like, it kind of captured in a story that probably could have been told over the course of an hour, was told so well in, I'd say, about 10 minutes of real time. And, you know, Jason Hare deserves a lot of credit for that, because we could probably nitpick and say they spent too long on Rodman or they spent too long on Pippen, given some of the stuff that they had to skim over. I thought they covered the Kerr thing really well.
Episode 10 was my favourite of the season, and I'm not sure if that's actually just because I've kind of forgotten, as you say, Eric B and Raheem, and that feels like such a distant memory. It's certainly been my favourite of the last 3 weeks. I hear what you're saying, but I think that the abrupt ending is perfect. I think that the story of how this all didn't go on till 1999 was the whole point of this. Like, Supersonic ends at Nebworth because the whole point was showing us why they were important and why that gig at Nebworth was important. This was the story of The Last Dance, and why The Last Dance was a significant thing, and why it was hugely significant that this whole thing fell apart. We've been teased every single week as to what actually the main talking heads would say come the end. Now, granted, it could have been double the length, the amount of content I felt on the actual dissolution of this team, but it's still what we've all been waiting for. And it was still a moment where Michael Jordan felt a little bit unsure, or at least was put on the back foot a little bit, when that iPad was put to him of Jerry Reinsdorf explaining his decision or explaining his offer to Phil Jackson, indeed, to move things on. It just felt that Michael Jordan was on the front foot for the entire thing. And then just for a moment here, it felt like, right, okay, there he is considering perhaps another point of view on this whole thing that was The Last Dance. I also love Dennis Rodman's behind the scenes exit from the training facility and trying to get away from the press. I think just letting the archive footage run has been a real strength. They did it brilliantly with Kobe at the start of, episode 5. They did it brilliantly with Rodman here. I really enjoyed episode 10. Like, I do think, though, that the sequence with Steve Kerr in episode 9 is stunning, and it's very hard not to love Steve Kerr. And we will get back to that in just a moment. But, lads, I just want to know if your opinions have changed on the breakup of the Bulls after watching those, 10-15 minutes on Reinsdorf, on Michael Jordan, and Pippen had a bit to say, and Phil Jackson had a bit to say in episode 10. Did you learn anything new? Has your opinion changed?
It's funny, if this was like Agatha Christie, a whodunit, if you watch episode 1, you're thinking, oh, Jerry Krause is getting all the blame for this. And yet, great storytelling, the way it's framed, and Scottie Pippen saying, I think he says Krause is the greatest GM ever. Whether he means it, I'm not sure. But to say that, kind of gets the point across. And they kind of squarely put it at Reinsdorf's door, where as he hands the iPad to him, he says, Jerry, and Jordan looks at him as if to say, Jerry Krause or Jerry Reinsdorf? And like, Hare's basically saying Reinsdorf has a lot to answer for here. And he does, because ultimately, although he went to Jackson belatedly and offered him that extra year, I think by then Phil Jackson had his mind made up. The 82-0 comment wasn't going to go away, this whole thing that doesn't matter what you do this year, you're gone. And that was Krause. But Krause was really, Reinsdorf was the puppet master here. He had the final say. And we'll probably get into it, like what 99 might have looked like. Was it even achievable to keep that team together? In practical terms, it probably wasn't. Would they have even won in 99? Probably not. Like, even again, in practical terms, it was a curtailed season because of the lockout. And it was, like you saw with this Bulls team in 98, they started slowly. Granted, that was because Pippen was injured, but it was very much a marathon rather than a sprint. And 99 would have been a sprint. I'm just not sure with the creaking bodies and whatnot. I just think they would have struggled. And even on Pippen, whose body was breaking down most noticeably there, he needed to get paid. Like, he was not going to hang around. I'm sorry for all you romantics out there. There's just no chance Scottie Pippen was staying unless they gave him like $60-70 million. And
they'd have found a way of doing that, though. This is the most lucrative cash cow in sports.
But Reinsdorf,
they'd have found 70 million from somewhere. The really astonishing part was the fact that Michael Jordan and Jerry Reinsdorf had never had a conversation. That was the bit that I was like, what? There was two moments, look, there's a bunch of moments that really blew my mind out my ears. One is Larry Bird getting shat on by Michael Jordan as he leaves the building, like basically going, "Here, practice your Galpiabalics." Like, it was properly, couldn't even win with grace in that moment. That blew my mind. But when he says to him, he says, Jerry Reinsdorf is going to talk about it. Oh, sure, I never had a conversation with him about this. Like, how the fuck does that happen? How do you allow Babe Ruth to walk away without even having a chat? Like, if Michael was that gung-ho for 7, should he fucking take the money out of his own pocket to make it happen? If he's that mad for it happening. But you're right, Ronan. It was never going to happen. Phil is so wise, he knew that.
And even Rodman, Jarlath, because Rodman, like, he was almost out of the team as it was. He was all but gone, like, as a part of the team ethic. And you saw, I think he started 23 games after that 1998 season. Like, his body just fell apart. You burn the candle at both ends. He had this freak athleticism like an Allen Iverson or a Roy Jones Jr. in boxing, but once it goes, it's gone. And Dennis Rodman
was... That's like you two lads in radio. I can tell from the cutty burning the candle at both ends. Eventually, lads, you're just going to flame out. Yeah. Me and Kieran are basically here to intervene and tell you to slow it down.
Kieran, how did this change your view on how things ended up?
Look, it's as hard to take as ever. I'll be quite honest with you, and I don't know who's to blame. I think Jerry Krause, it falls at his door with that whole comment of that 82. He can go 82-0. He's gone next year. I think you're right in a way. I think Phil knew that the writing was on the wall for the team, but I also think he had the ability to, if that comment was never made and it was left open-ended and it came to that end of that season and they did pull off the miraculous win that they did with Scotty injured, barely able to walk in that last game. And if that went to game 7, they probably would have been in trouble. But, it's those words that this will be Phil's last year. Like, I just think that's where I think Phil psychologically started to move on. He could have maybe neglected some of the kind of follow-through duties that a coach would have to make sure all these guys were going to be ready again for next year. Maybe he totally focused this was the last dance. He could have already talked to what his next move was going to be, which we know ended up being. But I disagree with Ronan. I think if they could have got them all back together, I really think they could have won the fourth one. I think Jordan with a rest could have won at Pippen if they got him back and got his back healthy. I think they could have won. And I'm probably being the romantic in it, but to be quite honest, when I look at that Spurs team that won it that year against the Knicks, I don't see the Knicks beating the Bulls team, and that Spurs team is early doors, like, it's really early. They know Manu, no Tony Parker at that stage. You know, they have a good few vets, and they've obviously Tim Duncan at you know, he's young, mobile, powerhouse self, one of probably the best power forward to ever play the game. And the Bulls probably would have struggled with him technically. But
what about the Bulls in '99, Kieran? If they manage to retain all the parts, are they as strong? Are they a depreciating asset?
I definitely, whatever the Rodman one would have been, the Rodman one would have been the one where Phil, having been told at the start of the year that this is last year, if he wasn't told that, I would think he would have tried to kind of maybe have a bit more scope and control over Rodman, because Rodman respected him at the end of the day. Probably got away with it because he knew at the same time that Phil would let him away with it, which was probably a bit of an issue. But that's the way Phil was. He wasn't going to be the guy that was going to be fining and you know, or probably did fine him, but he wasn't going to be the guy who was going to cut him or get rid of him or move him on or whatever. He knew he's prowess. But I think the Bulls in '99, with everybody back to give it one more go, like they won Game 6 in Utah with their second best player gone from the first minute, a power forward who never scores, and a bunch of role players and Michael Jordan, and they beat a really good Jazz team. So, you know, like, there's a lot of people have bet against Michael Jordan in this last dance. A lot of them with if we'd have Gary Payton, if we'd have done this, Charles Barkley, if we'd have done that, you know, Isaiah, if we'd have done this, Drexler, if we'd have done that. There's a lot of guys that have kind of excuses of why they didn't beat Jordan. The fact is he got 6 out of 6, and who's to say that getting in against that Spurs team in '97, where it probably really is now the last dance, I think they would have taken that Spurs team if even below their powers. But, you know, if they have a fit Scottie Pippen, why not? You know, why not? And who's to say that they could have made a move for another forward if Rodman wasn't the guy? They could have got somebody else. Maybe Kukoc steps his game up even further. You know, I think they had the parts.
How important for you, Jarlath, was it to potentially see a bit more about what happens next? I know you were saying that the ending was abrupt, perhaps seeing a bit about the lockout in '99, about how it wasn't necessarily the open goal the following season, for example.
Yeah, I don't think I needed to see much about next, but I did need a better explanation of the ending. Okay. There's no mention of the lockout. I mean, that was the real spanner in the works of getting this team back together. Literally no mention of it. It really was a huge veil that allowed this to take place. So this question of whether this next season would take place, for the listeners that don't know, but after that NBA Finals, there's a huge long negotiation with the players' union over essentially how much they get paid, and they get locked out by the league, and the following season takes place over 50 games rather than 82. And in that kind of blackout period, bearing in mind no social media, no pressure from the fans don't actually know what's going on, and it kind of slipped away, and that needed to be referred to. That's all I mean about, you know, the ending not being you know, enough.
I'd say it was because of the relationships were so fractured, though. I'd say I just don't know. Like, I don't like if Phil Jackson. I really think that looking at it last night, the one thing I took away is he thought that maybe this current team was gone. Maybe he thought maybe he knew deep down Pippen would never come back. Maybe he knew deep down that Rodman was gone. But if Reinsdorf offered him the job, I can't see why Phil wouldn't take it to shove it up Jerry Krause's arse. In other words, to kind of say, you know, here you go. Yeah, you said it was my last thing. I went and won it again. And the big boss has called me. He wants me back. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. I can see him possibly saying that. But as Jarlath rightly said earlier on, maybe he felt that the writing was on the wall for this team, and that he couldn't work getting this team back together. I think the lockout.
He was also old, man. He's getting old. You know, we underestimate. We talk about Mike getting burned out. I mean, you're trying to keep all these egos in check, and however zen you might be, he seemed pretty exhausted. And, you know, when they talk about it in the books on this subject, they talk about him riding off into the sunset. And, you know, when he eventually takes another coaching job, they do kind of stir him from a hibernation in Montana. He has no plans to do a thing. Just rest, because I'd imagine masterminding this and trying to control it, like Ronan Lazenby puts it really well about, you know, the wheels start to rattle on this thing, like Rodman disappearing, Scotty's back giving out. Even in that huddle, that tiny little window into that huddle of Jordan saying, I'm not switching, I'm not doing, I mean, like, okay, we've never seen that. Like, I don't think I've ever seen him openly contradict his coach like that. Maybe we haven't been allowed to see that. But, you know, it felt like the miracle of that game 6. And I really think they did that justice, in the sense that they got to slow down time and pick apart how those final points of his career were scored, and in the miraculous way in which it took place, where he's on the bench and he's literally not expending any energy. He realizes, okay, like, and you can imagine the calculations, and they talk about the calculations that he's making on the floor. I loved all of that. I just loved that he is calculating in his mind, if we don't do it now, it's not going to happen. These guys are surging. They'll take confidence from this. Scotty will not play the next game. He doesn't have another game in him. He can barely lift the trophy at the end. To be on the bench making the calculation that I can't even move here, I have no energy left, stay still and go out and blast it for the last minute and a half. Steal the ball from Karl Malone. People underestimate the steal from Karl is huge, right? And Kieran, you talked about that, the sneaking around underside, knowing that the arm game that Rodman had going with him would preoccupy him to the point of forgetting that Mike's still there. But the initial layup, the initial 2, get a quick 2, see where we go from there. That's stunning, because think about it. Utah, best defensive record in the league that year, he got a layup. He was able to get a layup in that.
It wasn't a wide open layup. It wasn't a wide open layup either, Jarlath. Like, there was bodies everywhere. He had to throw it high off the glass, off balance, falling away. That's the one. It's a really, that 42 seconds is poetry in motion, though. The whole, like, I love that part in the doc where I knew, you know, in my head I was going to say, you know, would they somehow figure out the way to actually finish it at that, because it is the finish of it in so many ways. Yeah, there's all the stuff that happened afterwards in the team, but that's the end. That last 42 seconds, the steal, you know. And even I love the way that Jordan said he had a sneaky look at his eye to Phil Jackson. You know, I always thought in my head Jordan got that ball and never looked at anybody and said, well, I'm going to win this. But he had a sneaky look. And I don't know whether Rodman did it on purpose, but again, these are things I picked up, and I've seen this play. I've seen these plays hundreds of times. And Rodman's kind of, you know, Scotty's coming down. Scotty X is one way, and he's like, I'm just getting out of the way. He's just trying to literally run out of the way. But Rodman then later on comes down the right-hand side of the court and cuts straight across and brings Antoine Carr with him, I think. But what it does is it gives Jordan a double gap, as our coach Pat Price of the Warriors would have called it, like, where there's nobody to help right. There's nobody can jump off a guard. The next helper was way over in the kind of wing/corner where Scotty had run to. And Jordan knew he had Byron Russell beat and beat bad. But you know, Jarlath spoke about his tiredness. He was wrecked. And I loved that bit as well, where he missed a lot of shots short in that fourth quarter. And then he comes back and he says, yeah, I just had to, you know, I had to make sure I extended it all the way. I had to get it right off my fingers. I had to rightly follow through. And yeah, you're kind of going, like, this is going through this guy's head as he's put somebody on the floor with a crossover. He's rising up and he's telling himself in the biggest pressure moment of all, and I guarantee it was probably in slow motion from at that stage, but like, follow through and the perfect shot, nothing but net. I'm trying to teach Lola Rose that swishes are better than just baskets, but like, that was the ultimate swish and the ultimate way to sign off. But like, you're talking about the following year, he averaged 34 points in that series. You know, he averaged 34 points. He'd 45 when it mattered most. You know, who on that Spurs team the following year is gonna guard him? Sean Elliott. Yeah, maybe.
But you know, Kieran, as you know, with any championship team, the planets need to align, and it felt like they had aligned for the final time. And you know, the finality of it, and like you say, how close they came to losing to the Pacers was well covered. And it's funny now too, because I remember the push off that Reggie did on Mike at the time. And I remember being as upset about that as any, all due respect to GA, Kieran, there have been some bad decisions in GA. And as a Kildare man, I know all about them. And I was as angry about any decision in any sports field in my life as that push off Reggie did on Mike to get open to hit that three. Fair play to him for hitting the three. But he called it a little shove. He went through him, threw both elbows into his chest and just kept running. To see the balance, though, of, I thought, oh, well, Mike did, the more I thought about it, well, Mike did push off Russell. And then they break that down. And actually, this is the first time in my life that I've watched it on a big screen, high definition. And I realize now he never pushed off at all.
Vastly different incidents.
There's literally no extension of the arm. There's no shove at all.
What about
like they said, showing a waiter showing you to your table was definitely the best piece of language to describe that.
The best trash talk line of all time was Jordan saying, "Don't ever talk to Black Jesus again."
Yeah.
Like when you're calling yourself Black Jesus, you know you're pretty good, I think.
That moment with Phil Jackson is just worth going back on for just a moment, because I hadn't seen that before, and it's just a really small thing. It's great coaching by doing no coaching, by just shutting up, not calling the timeout, complete trust in your players. And to be honest with you, part of me during the last 10 episodes has thought to myself, I just want to see more Phil Jackson. The one episode we got where it showed his background and it showed his real interest in Native America and how he managed to apply that to Dennis Rodman. Found that fascinating, and I wanted more. But actually, it's probably the absence of Phil Jackson that tells us a lot about Phil Jackson. That Jerry Krause is pretty quick to put himself front and center and say, this is all about the organization. I guarantee you Phil Jackson is the first man to say this is all about the players. And it is all about Michael Jordan, probably more than any of the other players. And just that moment, just shutting up, standing there, trusting in number 23. That's Phil Jackson right there, isn't it? It's not the triangle offense. It is the trust in his players.
That was a thing of his. And this comes up in the various different books that he's written and that have been written about him, of teams in crisis on the court, and how throughout the season he would deliberately go, this is on you guys. Do you want me to bail you out? This is on you to figure this out. You have a problem. Together, you're going to work it out. And yeah, that is the genius, some of the genius of the man. But God, his name has really been shaken by the time in New York. All the championships are one thing, but Phil Jackson is an example of somebody that probably could have walked away a little bit earlier and maintained the godlike reputation of Wooden, these kind of guys. But he lost some of that luster with some of the stuff and comments and falling asleep at practice and stuff like that. But this was him at his best. You're right. That it was like, I did remember, Kieran. I remember not only Rodman cutting across the lane in that final play, but I also remember Jordan making the steal and Rodman attempting to call the timeout, and then realizing, no, Mike's gone. This is game on.
I love the piece of footage from game one. You see that piece, the bit of footage from game one where they're down one, and like Phil is like, we're really in the fucking shit right now. It was it was just, I was kind of like, he goes, you guys have put us in the shit right now, and it's time you kind of
get serious.
Yeah, get serious. And I was kind of like going, okay, Phil, that obviously a guy that with his background and his pedigree, he's got 13 championships as a player and a coach, so he's allowed fall asleep at a Knicks practice. I can tell you that much, especially when he was there. But that all sides of him, and I really like I loved episode 10 as well. I'm with you, Owen. I loved that. I thought that scene was really powerful, and what a way to sign it off. And I was only hoping they'd go into those little, there's nothing more powerful than teams kind of sharing stuff about each other and how they feel and all that kind of stuff. It really does build a camaraderie, but that would have left they couldn't have left it any other way when they knew that the writing was on the wall, that this was going to be broke up.
Well, can I just ask you all then, just in terms of the legacy of Michael Jordan? I'm with you in the fact that I think that ending it on an abrupt note was fine. It's probably due to the fact that they didn't have a whole lot of time to actually plan the ending. Maybe it was ideal, but this is the way it was, and I'm fine with it. If you had an alternate ending, what is the one piece of legacy that you were threading through as a director here? Like, what is the thing? Like, for me, it has to be something a little bit more about how Michael Jordan influenced the next generation of basketballer. I don't think we get that. We get any sense of that throughout the entire documentary series. That's fine because it's based on the 90s and the 90s alone. I think we get an instant hit of how important he was at the time. But in terms of what comes next in the league as a whole, I don't think we get any real sense of that. And it's a bit of a shame because there's always so many conversations about Michael Jordan as the GOAT and whether or not LeBron James will ever be able to be in the same conversation. Whereas I would be of the opinion that Michael Jordan was amazing so that people like LeBron James could take the game to a whole new level. Like if Michael Jordan was born 20 years later, he'd be a different basketballer, for example. But basketball became an even greater sport after Michael Jordan because of what he did in the game. And that for me is just a little bit missing from the legacy part of things.
Well, like we've spoken about how it's been portrayed as a profile piece in certain quarters where because Michael Jordan signed off on it that he wanted to put out this image of himself. But there was light and shade in it, no more so than the Republicans wear sneakers too thing, which they kind of fleshed out more than I thought they would. And I remember speaking to Harry Edwards around the Mexico City protest, doing a piece on that. And like he was talking about Michael Jordan in that context. So Michael Jordan would have been, I think, 5 years old when that happened. So he wasn't of the civil rights generation. He was the post-civil rights generation. And to your point, Owen, those lads opened doors for black athletes that were coming after him. And he kicked those doors down and sort of paved the way for the likes of Kobe Bryant first. And then LeBron James has taken it to another level almost from what Kobe did. So I think, as you said,
this goes without saying, lads. I don't think it needed to be said. I mean, I think that like if they had included 5 minutes of, and now look at how Michael Jordan influenced the game. I mean, as a bowler, as a hoops fanatic, I mean, that's like saying, like, look at how Ali affected fighting. I mean,
but
we're doing this documentary because of his impact. His impact is felt from the shape of the shorts that people wear to young lads sticking out their tongues to David Beckham wearing 23 for the Galaxy. You know, I didn't feel that was missing at all. If anything, I felt that if we're looking at the list of grudges that he holds, and we throughout the series got everyone from Christ down to the Isaiah Thomas feud. LeBron James is on that list because, you know, this, whether he wants to ever admit that or not, this in effect, this whole series and the green light for it was him going, you made it personal. Don't forget who the greatest is. And that to me is this 10-part series is the perfect tribute to the man. And in essence, he deserves that. So if you want a hard-hitting documentary on Michael Jordan, go somewhere else. We needed a tribute to the man and what he did, and that's what this is.
An alternate ending for you, Kieran. What would you have changed?
I don't know what I've changed much. I like Jarlath said, his effect was he brought the game like to the next level, and that's known in basketball. Magic and Larry brought it to a certain level, and then Jordan blew the top off it. Probably why there was a strike and fellas were looking for more money in '98 was on the back of what Michael Jordan had done for the NBA and all the players. I think it was Willow Bay, one of the talking heads, female broadcaster. She was saying that, like, you know, this guy was mega worldwide before, you know, we didn't even have the cable television that they would have got anything from America over here. There's no social media. You got posters, you got Sports Illustrated, you got Slam, you got old VCR tapes, you got Come Fly With Me, you got Airness, you got Playground. And then when Jordan retired, there was an ultimate box set that came out with like 6 DVDs, and it's the one I have at home with all the 3 videos and special games and highlights and all that. That was his effect, and that was his legacy. But like Jarlath, I don't think they had time to go into it. But his effect is he had a 12-year-old from Carsley and Tralee out the back for 3 or 4 hours a night shooting the basketball. That's You know, that's worldwide. And if you look at the NBA today and what it is and what David Stern has managed to do on the back of Michael Jordan and knowing how to exploit Michael Jordan's fame, they brought the game to a global audience now, and it's you've people from all over the world playing in the NBA. Every continent is represented. It's a worldwide game thanks to Michael Jordan. There's Michael Jordan, there's Muhammad Ali, there's Tiger Woods. They're the three that are on a level of their own, and I'd have Kobe ahead of LeBron in my ranking, and I think Jordan's heart and like we see all the moves, we see the flashy moves, we see the style, we see the willingness, the doggedness to win, and we see the figment of imagination that he used to get a one up on somebody so he could make sure he could go perform. I think what's missed, I think what they never got into is that he played 304 out of 304 games in the last 3 years. Like it's off the wall stuff. How a guy coming back after baseball, after a year and a half playing basketball, can go play 304 out of 304 games. Never once took a night off. Never once. And his reason for not taking a night off is because, you know, there could have been an Owen Sheehan from Killarney on his holidays in Chicago, and he wanted to go see the Bulls. And if Michael Jordan was on a rest day, that was his one chance ever, never going to get to see him. So he wanted to play every game, and I think that's totally underestimated in how amazing it was, this three-peat that he played a part in every game.
Just on your point, Jarlath, about a lot of things not needing to be said, you're right. There's a lot of things that we don't need to be informed of. At the same time, how cool would it have been for Jordan to be asked about his legacy, or to be asked about what happens next, or to actually hear what he has to say about it? I know he's been asked about it in the past, but I think that 70, 80%, and that's probably being generous to the documentary makers, of this entire content has been stuff that we've all known about anyway, and a lot of stuff didn't really need to be said. The whole point is this is the Michael Jordan documentary, and getting him to, I don't know, interact with things on an iPad, or getting him to actually give his definitive trash talk line on people. That's what we want to see. This is all.
I disagree. I disagree. Like I disagree with any questions about legacy, history, and kind of overarching stuff, in the same way as comedians getting asked, where do you get your jokes from? What are women funny? These kind of, I don't give a damn about that. And also, I don't, like, that's not for him to say. You know, this idea of legacy and where you fit in and your influence, he's the worst person to ask about that, because he's just living his life. What I'm more interested in, and what I came to this for, was specific detail. The behind the scenes footage, just not used enough for me. I know he drew a line through a lot of stuff, but sometimes Jason Hare's questioning kind of bugged me as well. The pizza story, the flu game, we have a chance to really pull at the threads of this. 5 guys arrive at 10:30 at night, the only pizzeria open in Utah. Mike wants a pizza. First of all, what's Michael Jordan doing eating pizza the night before a game? I mean, even I knew that in secondary school.
Hold on a minute.
Don't be eating a big lump of
that.
bread. A big lump of bread at 10:30 at night when you've got a game in the next day.
Rodman was drinking tequila. Rodman was drinking tequila.
Yeah, different animal. His system was used to it. I just thought. Also, Tim Grover, I have a bad feeling about this. Well, don't make him eat the feckin' pizza then, Tim. You're meant to be if you have a bad feel, like, to me, that's like, I hate Irish people that go, I knew that was going to happen. And you're like, yeah, well, you didn't say anything at the time, so that's feck all use to anybody now. That's basically what Tim Grover did. I wanted them to pull at those details more.
What do you suspect?
What was on the pizza?
Okay.
How did they poison this pizza? Like, what? Like, and Michael Jordan is Mr. Grudge. Is pizza now on the list?
I would say it certainly is.
Yeah.
I just have
to find that pizzeria, buy it, and run it into the ground, put all the guys out of work. I mean, it just seemed like there was a few times in this, like, I get what you're saying. Historically, where does all of this fit in? And there's books on that. and they had academics in here. There's a brilliant documentary if people are looking for further reading called Unbanned, and it literally is about that impact. It is about the cultural impact of the man on the culture, on music, fashion, art, and sport. People should go and watch that next. But for me, this was behind the scenes. I mean, behind the scenes should be, I want to watch Mike Lace's shoes. I'm sorry, maybe I'm that nerd, but I feel like I'm not alone on this, that we watched this down the lens of Channel 4 giving us a highlights show on a Saturday morning that you recorded and watched back until it was unwatchable. We're now getting the chance to get the fine detail. And at times I felt like the fine detail was just a little bit short, even in the questioning of Scottie Pippen saying, if I could go back, I'd do it all again. Ask more. Come on, let's get a bit more detail here. We have the time and space.
On the pizza thing, my image is of the 5 people being 5 children in a big trench coat, holding up the pizza, trying to disguise themselves from actually trying to ruin Michael Jordan at the time. I just don't see how 5 people...
Muppets.
Like, it's the least... it's the most conspicuous thing you can possibly do. You travel in a group to actually try and point someone.
Five Guys burgers, good. Five Guys pizza, bad.
Not so good.
Run.
I was about to say the burgers before the National League final last year did us no harm.
what were on the burgers? You obviously
There were five guys.
Oh, sorry, there were actual 5 guys. Ah, right.
Yeah, there were actually 5 guys. Yeah.
Before the National Cup final or National League final.
Before the National League final last year. Yeah.
Right. Jesus, okay.
We did before the cup game. We went and had pasta and chicken and all the right stuff, and we were absolutely shocking. So, I think fellas didn't want the kind of the sit down regular meal. So, someone suggested, "Come on, we go to 5 Guys for a burger. We're trying to kill some time." So, yeah, we did. We headed out, and it didn't affect us the next day. So the pizza, Jarlath, Jordan wasn't the only night Jordan had pizza before a game. Don't worry. Game is the following night. Like, it's not going to have too much effect on them. There's dietitians probably pulling their hair out now as I'm speaking.
Yeah.
But anyway.
There's definitely a lot of stuff though that you did look back. Like, there's a lot of stuff in it that really added to the nostalgia of this. I'm sure for pros watching it, even just this, that would never be allowed now. The team would probably travel with a chef, and the regulation and the tightness of the circle.
That's what I was thinking. Why didn't the hotel? How could they not? What they're probably staying? I presume they're staying in a 5-star hotel. Like, please tell me someone couldn't whip him up a pizza downstairs.
Yeah. That story's always intrigued me for years and years. So I think there's an awful lot. Like, we could easily talk on and on on those details. Owen,
it's 2-2 in that series. This flu game. So. If he doesn't miraculously score 38 points in 44 minutes and absolutely carry them with no fluid or no fluid in his body, no food in his body, if he was able to go to that, I think it was David Aldridge said that he was like the Terminator. He came out and he said, "I'm going to go to another level, whether you can believe it or not. I'm going to go there," and he did. And if they lose that and they're 3-2 down, very possibly they lose the next game. The trajectory is totally different. So, like, that game can't be underestimated in how important it was in his legacy. In the end, it of course added to his legacy. But if they'd have lost that game, and they could have lost it, if they'd have lost that game, it's maybe you're right, Charlotte. Maybe he's buying out all those pizza parlors at that time and closing the whole place down. But
well, Ryan Russillo on the Bill Simmons podcast said that he has a memory of someone in Park City coming up to him and saying, deadly serious, years later, I'm the guy that poisoned the pizza that Michael Jordan ate. And I knew of that. I knew that there's a guy going around going, that was me, even though he still beat you. There was a tiny glimmer of hope in me that Jason Hurd had tracked down that guy. But that wasn't to be. I mean, that is asking too much now.
that really is the next 10-part series, the pizza guy.
Yeah.
Let's just
What happened to
we'll take a quick pit stop here to talk about Jordan's list, because in episode 9, he has officially revealed that he has a list when he's talking about Brian Russell and going up against him, and he does something and he's like, this guy's on the list. And I think we've kind of suspected this for the last 5 weeks or so, that there is an actual physical list of names that Michael Jordan has. Brian Russell, top of the list. Guys, chip on in here. Who else is on this list?
Well, Reggie Miller. Reggie
Yeah.
Miller for a start. Like, I thought Reggie Miller, the reason he got his little shine in Game 6 of that Eastern Conference Finals is because Jordan knew, we won that anyway. I don't mind him getting a few minutes in the sunshine here, but I thought he stepped into the Ron Harper role today. Reggie Miller was class at the start, at the end of last week, and at the start of this week. I thought he was really good. And then, as you said, Brian Russell, and in that famous Stuart Scott piece that we played a few weeks ago, Owen, I think Michael Jordan said, is it Byron or Brian Russell? And he obviously knew well at that point who he was. So, as you said, that list had been... he put his name down there, whether it was misspelled or not, I'm not quite sure. And then the obvious one, Karl Malone winning MVP, which I'm not sure about regular season MVP at the best of times. Like, the most important part of the season is the postseason. So let's sort of encapsulate everything. And Cren won. Cren in 2 is a good compromise, but I always think there's it's a bit of an asterisk if you don't subsequently do it in the playoffs. But the fact that Jordan himself, he'd won countless at this point, and then went on to win the series MVP, that was something that drove him as well. And we spoke previously about Karl Malone, a star in his own right, second to Kareem in scoring. Only LeBron is more like all NBA appearances, first team. So this is a good player. And even Jordan was like, he's not on my level. So those are a few new entries to the list, but there are plenty, as you said.
Jarlath, who have you got to add to the list?
So I have Juanita, the wife, the ex-wife, didn't get a mention. Can you imagine the shit she was putting up with, if that's what the teammates were putting up with? But and the biggest settlement in sports divorce law history. So that's the people that I have down are people that he has such a grudge against, he didn't even put them in the documentary. His high school coach, I mean, the guy that cut him, who started the fire that everyone else couldn't put out. Isaiah Thomas, not the Isaiah Thomas from back then. I would say he hates the modern Isaiah Thomas just because of his fucking name. As I said, I think LeBron is on the list. Lad who made the pizza, definitely on the list. And anyone who wears Adidas or another sports brand. Now, this is a story that comes from the Sports Illustrated piece, which was quite a sad piece. You can look it up online about where he is turning 50. And there's a story within it that a new PA had been hired, and she came in one day doing, the classic Aisling thing of wearing her sports shoes on the walk down the quays into work. And Mike got wind that she was wearing Pumas to work for Michael Jordan. And the next day she arrived into work, and I know a lot of people are going, and he had a nice big box of Air Jordans for her. No, he had taken a scissors and chopped up all of her runners. He himself. That's how big the grudge is against anyone who would deign to wear another sports brand in his employ. So that's my other one, is anyone not wearing his shoes.
Kieran, you've got a few more spaces to add to the list here.
No, I'd say Jarlath has it summed up there from going outside the realms of it. I think he had real people on the list, and I think half the list is a bit of bullshit. BJ Armstrong, LeBradford Smith, all of these fellas. That was Jordan's own mind, just trying to get him up for games, get him up for certain situations. Even in the finals, he's not really against Magic in '91. He liked Magic. He knew he was going to beat the Lakers. They knew they were better at that stage. Even Drexler, I think, is a bit fake. I wanted to prove to Drexler. I think he knew deep down he was way better than Drexler, and they're comparing me to Drexler. Well, I'll prove them wrong. No, that was again all Jordan's inner monologue that was getting going. I think the real people on the list were the Pistons, the bad boys, the guys down low, and Isaiah, obviously. The Knicks, in both his three-peats, the Knicks and Ewing would have been a big one, and Ewing doesn't get much love considering he beat him in a college final and beat him all the way through his pro career. And the only time Ewing had any luck, Jordan was gone, and he still lost the final. So I think the Suns and Barkley were on his list. Really, I think Barkley was on his list, even though he was really good friends. I think Barkley had done enough mouthing off in the Olympic build-up that Jordan couldn't wait to get his hands on him. I think Reggie and the Pacers were legit and definitely on his list, because it went over the 92, 93 footage of Reggie and Michael's fight. And I think Reggie was always on Michael's hit list, because I'd say he respected him as a really good player and a bit of a trash talker and a long defender and a perennial all-star, a dream team type of player after Jordan's team. I think he was on the list. And I think the Jazz were on the list with Malone and Stockton, and they would have felt, we could have got them both times. As I said, the flu game in '97, that series could have gone either way on that result. And I think in Game 6, when Scotty's down and Jordan's out there with a bunch of role players, and he has to go score 45 points for them to win the game, and he does it all that way. And Malone coming onto the bus. Afterwards.
Get off the fucking bus. What are you doing on the bus?
Yeah.
What's he doing in there?
Yeah, I think
what a classy guy. Get off the bus.
Yeah, the hugging with Jordan at the end really sums up maybe why.
It looked like Jordan was awkward himself.
He was like, what the fuck? You had loads of chances to give me a high five back there.
It sums up why Malone, in my eyes, didn't get the Jazz over the line. He just didn't have the
terrible dress sense.
Jordan have.
Terrible
Jordan wasn't going up the bus against the Pistons in 89, 90, kind of going, hey lads, best look. I hope you go win another championship. Malone at that stage was knocking on the door near the end of his career, like how he's even in the headspace to be going up the bus. And you could call it nice sportsmanship, but it's rubbish in my eyes. Nice sportsmanship. You ring the guy in a week and you say, man, well done. You know, he did it again.
It's a weird move.
This going up the bus, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, to be honest. So he was definitely on the list, but that would be the real list for me. They were the five.
I think Horace is on the list as well, Kieran. Do you think Horace is on?
I think Jordan's real list is on teams that he felt maybe might beat them at a stage. And I think they're the real. I think that's the real list. I think the rest of the list is
there's hundreds of people on the list, but I know what you mean.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Every team, there was a guy that Jordan was like, oh, this fella now thinks he's great. I'm going to put manners on him. As I said, he played 304 of the last 304 games. You have to have something that wants you to tug out against the Bullets in a Thursday night game where you're winning by 30, like, you know. But, you know, nice insights. Him so into the game when they were winning Game 3 against the Jazz. I like that side of Jordan. He was, Bill Winnington is the only guy not to score. Let's go, Bill. Let's get a basket. And, you know, like, that's a game that actually, I don't know how, but it's a game, maybe because it was so inevitable and maybe I went to bed early or fell asleep, or I can't understand how I missed how big of a hammering they gave him in Game 3. Like, it's off the charts how a team could do that.
Jerry Sloan, MVP of that episode for me.
Yes.
Twice he made me absolutely spit out my drink. First of all, was he sick? I didn't know he was sick. Here, did everybody else know he was sick? I mean, how does that information not trickle through? Because if that information gets to him, they target him every time down the court. Wear him out, pull on his arms. He's probably going to get sick if you breathe in his face. I mean, the man is fragile. That was remarkable, but hilarious that he would say it so openly in the press conference. And then obviously, is this the real score? That still makes me laugh. Is this the full score?
54.
That's still funny to me.
That just shows you when Rodman and Scotty and Jordan are dialed in against two Hall of Famers, and the rest, you know, that was a nice squad, that Jazz squad. They were a really, really good team, and people, Jordan naysayers piss on the Jazz a small bit, saying, oh, the Jazz this, he Jeff Hornacek marketing. He didn't have Jeff Hornacek marketing for too long at all. He had either Shannon Anderson or Byron Russell, 2 6'7" athletes that were draped all over him, and they couldn't handle him.
Little side fact there, lads. John Stockton went to Dungarvan in 1992, the national basketball camp, and coached Irish young lads from all over the country. And by all accounts, everyone expects John Stockton to be, you know, skinny little white guy with the tiny shorts. By all accounts, he was a brick shithouse himself,
a beast.
That's when you see him actually getting posted up by Mike and holding his own. You forget that, like, that guy was a beast, like an absolute untold beast. And the fact that he was saying, I was not overawed by the Chicago Bulls, was a beautiful classic Stockton moment that I loved.
Do we know anyone who was at that Dungarvan camp?
Many of the Newbridge lads were there. I wasn't there that year myself.
Right, geez, that's incredible. I didn't know that. I think it's the same with a lot of the NBA players.
I was 2 years late too. 94 was my first year. Right. But I heard about it, and I heard about that he was an absolute. He was an absolute tank, physically wise, shoulders, arms.
Question number one from the campers, when asked, "Do you have any questions for John Stockton?" Literally, question number one was, "What's it like to defend Michael Jordan?" Yeah, understandably.
Yeah, I'd imagine for all those 90s players, that is question number one that they got, especially in that moment and when they're traveling around the world. If you did say that Sloan might be MVP of episode 9, Jarlath, if it's not him, it's going to be Steve Kerr. Just because Ronan, as you said at the top of the show here, it's just a beautiful 10, 15 minutes of documentary making. I tweeted this earlier. I genuinely believe he's the nicest guy. Certainly, if not in sport, just in the world or any public figure that I've seen, just in terms of his values, in terms of his generosity, the way he speaks, his backstory, there is nothing to dislike whatsoever about Steve Kerr. It's brilliant.
If anything, lads, and I only say this from a storytelling point of view, that, you know, the way when you're writing a show or writing a story is to, you know, plant the seed early so that, you know, you can gain the return on it later. I would have planted the seed of Steve Kerr earlier rather than trying to cram it all into one episode, because, as you say, it's such a strong and powerful moment when it all comes good for him. If anything, the achievement here was how they managed, you know, bring tears to my eyes as he's hitting these clutch shots, and then having the humor to take the piss out of Mike afterwards in Grant Park. It was miraculous. Like for Jason Hare, that's the 90-second period at the end of Game 6 against the Jazz. That little window that he creates for Steve Kerr there is his opus. It's unmatched, and I loved it. I just loved it so much.
I actually think, the symmetry of it was perfect, because it kind of came around the blind side. We knew we got Pippen in depth and we had Rodman in depth, and we knew the Kerr shot was coming, but we didn't know this was coming necessarily. And nothing was left to the imagination, or has been over the years, about where he got his schooling from on the basketball court as a coach. Playing under Phil Jackson, playing alongside Michael Jordan is as good an education as you're going to get. But to see what his dad was like, even more in depth, and it's no coincidence, to your point, Owen, how sociologically tuned in this man is, given what his dad was like. You've seen it with the Kaepernick case when he spoke out on that, when few others did. Donald Trump, when almost no one did. He was one of the people who did. And even from a purely basketball sense, the way he spoke about John Paxson and buying into being a role player. And like, perversely, it's almost as difficult being a role player, because every shot you take is scrutinized and amplified. If you miss your threes, and we spoke about it in Game 5 of that 97 series when we did the flu game, in Game 5, he missed like every single one of his threes.
He's terrible.
I very much doubt he's shown that to his Warriors team. You know, that's not the technique, but the grit to come back in the following game and nail that shot, having just been told 30 seconds prior that he might be getting the ball, and in Paxson-like style to like basically nothing but net. Like, just as the lads have said, he's a 360 figure, and as you tweeted earlier, like possibly the nicest human being on the planet. So
and least moisturized.
I will say I'd never seen the "I'll be ready" clip before. It's obviously something that's quite famous, just because of the way they approach it. I've
seen that clip. It's a great clip.
Oh my God,
it's a great clip, but it's amazing how Mike is trying to subtly go, just so you know, there's every chance the ball is going to, like Steve said, he's so excited. Just go, I'll be ready. Jesus, just pass me the ball. I loved it.
Steve Kerr is me if I had about 4 pints before playing with Michael Jordan. It's just Dutch courage. He's like, yeah, give me the ball. I'll absolutely nail it. Oh, I loved it. There's just so much about this guy that you can relate with. Like with Michael Jordan, he's a million miles away from me anyway as an individual. I think it's like that is so unattainable. But there are just parts of Steve Kerr.
You're more like Michael Jordan than you're letting on. Come on. Believe in yourself.
There are just parts of Steve Kerr, although I did moisturize last weekend. There are parts of Steve Kerr that I can relate to. I may have better skin than you in 20 years' time, Steve Kerr. And you know what? I may be similar as well. I don't know. There's just so much about him that gives hope. And I don't even know what he gives hope about. But it's just so good listening to him. Like you could listen to him talk all day. I know he's got a podcast at the moment with Pete Carroll, and it's fantastic as well. And he's just
don't underestimate this guy as well, Owen, because
that's the thing. That's the thing.
You know, you see this little guy on the court with all these monsters around. Like if Steve Kerr played in Ireland, he'd average 60 a game. Steve Kerr was a baller. Like Steve Kerr could dribble, could handle the ball, could shoot the life out of it. Was strong. You know,
and you could be fight for every. And be sure he's a ruthless coach as well with the Warriors. I guarantee you, as a coach, he is cutthroat.
Yeah, I think Ronan touched on it. Like, what better schooling could he have? He went from Jordan and Phil Jackson to Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan. You know, that's where he went the following year. So his education and his taking bits and pieces from everybody was probably the reason he was able to hold all those egos in check in Golden State and end up doing very well, and got kind of caught one year by the freakishness nature of that amazing Cleveland comeback. Like that's his tarnish on his resume. But you know, even last night, Russ Bradford, the guy who coached us here in Tralee, went away and wrote a book that sold very well in America called Paddy and the Hardwood. He reached out to Steve Kerr about this guy called Sean Harrington. Sean Harrington was a guy who played New Mexico State that Russ brought down from Chicago, recruited him, had a very successful, had a little cameo in the Hoop Dreams movie. He was from the school. Come on, Jarlath, what's the school in Hoop Dreams? It's the famous one in Chicago.
Marquette.
No, high school. High school,
Dunbar.
No. Dunbar is somewhere else. That's not Chicago, I think. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
Shots fired.
he was on that team in Hoop Dreams. He went to New Mexico. He's a great college group. Yeah, maybe it's not that either. I'll come back to it. There's two guys in Hoop Dreams, and one of them went to this inner city Chicago high school that was like, you the computers, look it up. And Sean Harrington was he finished his career. He had a few years pro. He went back coaching. He was coaching back in this high school, and he was on the way dropping his daughter to class beforehand. And he was in a rental car. His car got stolen the week before in the school. He got a rental car. He was driving the rental car to his daughter's school, and he noticed two guys walking down the sidewalk who kept looking over their shoulders with hoods, and he found them a bit weird. And they walked up to the pedestrian crossing, and they turned, and they mistakenly identified him as a gang member because of the car, but he was in an actual rental car. And they opened fire with two pistols on each guy and rained 8 or 9 bullets in the top of the car. But he dived across to save his daughter, to jump in front of his daughter, pull her down. And he got shot twice, once in the arm and once in the spine, and was paralyzed. And there's a big fundraiser going for him now. I actually tweeted about it last week. They're trying to get him into a condo so he can coach and he doesn't have to worry about going up and down stairs and then try and make it. But they asked Steve Kerr to help promote it. And Steve Kerr put out the tweet last night. You know, like, this is Steve Kerr's night on The Last Dance. And at 8 o'clock, he's got a tweet up kind of going, you know, Sean Harrington, what a great guy, amazing story, what he did for his family to save his daughter's life. You know, he's trying to get into a condo. Go support him if possible. And I'm here going, Steve, your episode's airing in an hour. Like, that sums him up as an individual. He knows being at the highest level. He knows winning championships. He knows where he is on that list. And then he backed himself as a coach and went and probably coached the best basketball team ever, if we're going to be straight about it, talent-wise. And yeah, he's done it all with class, and I thought he was pure class in his episode yesterday. But I just thought that was such a classy touch last night, of all nights, to be worried about somebody else when it's your night to shine. Really, I think sums up Steve Kerr, that he wasn't on tweeting about, oh, make sure you check me out in the last dance tonight. He was tweeting about, can we help this guy who comes from a tough area in Chicago get a house that he can actually do what he wants as a coach in there without having, without trying to get up steps in the projects, etc.
Yeah, he's he's come out so well from these last couple episodes as well.
Amazing.
It's Marshall. Is that the name of the high school you were thinking of?
Marshall. Yeah, Marshall.
I'm glad we got there in the end. That's all that matters. There's a couple of other things. You want to get stuck into over the next little while here. One of the things for me that really stuck out, and I think this kind of points to a whole wider situation with Michael Jordan, is at the start of episode 10 when we are told that Michael Jordan is brilliant at being present. He's brilliant at living in the here and now. The moment isn't something that passes Michael Jordan by. He's somebody who manages to achieve that. He soaks all the good moments in, and for whatever reason, I just did not expect this to be something we would hear about Michael Jordan. I don't know why. I thought that for some reason we would have a wistful Michael Jordan throughout this documentary series, where he would be like, I wish I appreciated those days a little bit more. But that's not what we got at all. We actually got a Michael Jordan who celebrated the moments as much as anybody else, possibly more than anybody else, who possibly actually used those mini grudges that you've alluded to, Kieran, and actually made them a little bit bigger in his own head, because he lives in the moment so much. And by making those mini grudges so much bigger in his own head, it allowed him to go out and outperform himself night after night after night. I'm not sure if it's something that stuck out to other people, but certainly for me, it was mentioned on a couple of times in episode 10, where it is the living in the here and the now, the thing that so many humans struggle with, the grasping onto moments that they don't know are so special until they're gone. Michael Jordan seemed to have a real appreciation for those special moments at that very time.
Well, like you, Owen, I thought they were sort of trying to prescribe that to him. It's, as you said, it's not something I'd heard an awful lot about. But then he actually says it in some of the behind-the-scenes footage when he's playing the piano. And I use that term advisedly because he's not really playing the piano. He's just bashing on the keys. But he says something about Zen Buddhism when they're asking him, are you coming back next year? And he's like, no, I'm just living in the moment. I'm enjoying it now. And at that stage, and he says it himself in purely basketball terms again, that he'd kind of conquered his mind at this point where he almost loves 98 above everything else, because his body was kind of slowing down a little bit, but he was able to pick his moments and take over games as much psychologically as physically. And it's something we said in the very first episode we did here, that he came to Chicago and there was no reputational pressure with that franchise. Like, it was like, there was nothing about, oh, we're afraid of the Bulls. People were afraid of Michael Jordan, and when they saw him on the floor in clutch time, they knew he was the guy that was going to close it out. And by 98, he was able to use that leverage, that mental pressure, almost reputational pressure, to win games. And I think that's the most incredible thing about his body of work, that not only did his own journey, but how he took this franchise that was like a New England Patriots team that hadn't won anything to, by the end of the Tom Brady era, for example, they've won everything. He did the exact same thing with the Bulls, if not more so. So yeah. I think that's the enduring thing.
Kieran, can I just ask you about that, actually? Because I think people who've played sport at a high level always say that it's those instant 5 minutes after winning a championship, or maybe it's half an hour, that is the most special you can possibly have. It must just be an impossibly hard thing to actually bottle up and appreciate every time it happens. Like, do you look at Michael Jordan and say, geez, he's done well there to actually take a moment, and he's dealing with this in a way that would allow him to appreciate it down the line a little bit more too?
Yeah, and I think that comes with age, and it comes with a gap. And Jordan had a 2 years gap, whether we like it or not. He was playing baseball for one of them, and he came back and lost the series to Orlando in the other one. And I think I don't know how much he celebrated 1, 2, and 3. I think 1 was massive. You know, I think the second one, the third one, at the end of the third one, he's just wrecked. He's enjoying it with his dad. I don't know how much jubilation there is there. I think there's a lot going on in his head, if I'm being quite honest, at that stage. You know, he's probably thinking about retiring. His dad is there. You know, he's thinking about baseball. He's thinking, Jesus, great, I'm going. But there's also the thing in his head where I'm still the best player in the world. Do I really go? So I'd say there was a lot going on in his head at that stage. I think the second, after the break, you know, even me in 2014 when we won it with Kerry, you know, I won a lot in the early. We won 3 in the early part of my career, and then I went this 5-year drought of losing semi-finals, losing finals, and you start saying, geez, will I ever get that feeling again? Because I didn't really take much notice of it. enjoy the other ones enough, even though you did enjoy them, but you aren't in the moment, as you rightly say, Owen, about Jordan and this. And I think the time come 98, the way it finished for him, I think he was really in the moment. And you know what summed up the moment from Jordan for me in this whole thing, and I think it's actually one of my favorite, bar the obvious one of the end of episode 7, where he gets emotional and he's talking about that. The other highlight for me from a Jordan point of view is after they beat the Pacers in Game 7, his entrance into the dressing room. And I'm a big guy in body language. I'm a big guy when I look at a team, or I'm on a team, or I'm managing a team, and I look, first thing I look for in everybody is body language. What's their body language like in certain situations? Are they sulking? Are they over the top celebrating? Are they just the right amount? I thought his entry into the dressing room, well done, Judd. Well done, way to come in and play. Well done, Steve. Massive shot. He went around and thanked everybody, even Luke Longley, who he doesn't get on with. He was thanking Luke Longley. Good game, Luke. He was buzzing. And then it kind of rolled onto the intro into the Jazz, and he makes that shot from the hash mark over by where the coach's box ends efficiently. The whole team tries it. They're all chucking it like this. They're all doing gammy shots to try and get the power. And Jordan just walks in like he's shooting a free throw, pure nothing but net. But his entry onto the bus, the music, the smile, he's exuding confidence, even though I'd say deep down he's absolutely shattered. Like that Game 7, he was probably wrecked going into that against the Pacers. But like his body language to his teammates afterwards, we're good. We're after beating these guys. We're going to win this as well. And his whole lead up into that Game 1, even though they lost it in overtime, but I love that little insight into him in between those two series. From a body language point of view, and if you're a coach and you're looking how guys, carry themselves, I really enjoyed that insight that I felt we got from that, the dressing room footage of the Pacers ending, and the bus journey, the plane ride, the shoot around with his teammates, and just a little bit of he was ready. He was telling these guys, I'm ready to go, and I just like that insight we got.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I think it's really a really good point you make about the body language. I think it's also a good point that you make about how close his father was in a couple of those early wins. And it's actually something we forgot to touch on when it came to Steve Kerr, that he mentions that he never actually spoke to Michael Jordan about their fathers passing away way too soon. And does that tell us more about Michael Jordan? Like that, I don't think we've seen too much from Jordan in terms of the actual grieving process of his father. Like, he's obviously completely well within his rights to not share too much on that fairly tough subject throughout this documentary. But it's interesting that one of his teammates says that it was never a point of discussion. Granted, there was perhaps distance between Steve Kerr and Michael Jordan, as there was between a lot of teammates and Michael Jordan as well. Just interested in perhaps your take on that one, Jarlath.
Well, I think it relates to your point about presence and being in the moment. That were he to go to lunch with Steve Kerr and try and bond over the similarities in the way they've both lost their fathers, it takes them both out of the moment, takes them to a place that neither of them needs to be at in order to be killers. And, I know that it can seem a little bit of a propaganda video at times. That the documentary does steer into praise festival, and that's hard not to do that when somebody is this good. But the notion that the stillness and presence is being attributed to him kind of retrospectively is incorrect. The sports psychologist George Mumford that wrote the book, The Mindful Athlete, I recommend that to anyone, coaching or otherwise, Kieran. It's an absolute must read. Is this book by George Mumford, who was the sports psychologist for Michael Jordan and those Bulls, and subsequently Kobe and those Lakers. And he specifically steered Phil towards getting the players to be the eye of the storm, as he refers to it. And in many ways, that final shot and the lack of a timeout was just that. I mean, the stillness and the presence of mind to literally dribble out the clock when, he could have literally made that steal and tore headlong up the court even though he was exhausted. There's probably a way of drawing a foul in that position. But Mumford and Phil Jackson together were this spirituality, and this centeredness was the teaching, and the focus on the last dance is the reference to owning the finality of your moment, whether it's your first or your last moment. You can only really be in the one you have. And in The Mindful Athlete, in that book, and in Phil Jackson's books, he does talk about, culturally, we're all told to reach for somewhere else. And I think perhaps in lockdown, we're feeling that and realizing that more and more, that we're all so keen on leaving our houses. But when we leave our house, we're essentially going, how am I going to get home? Whereas actually just wherever it is you are is the place you need to be at that moment in time. And bringing the Bulls to that place and to that presence is not some kind of retrospective post-rationalization of how good Michael Jordan was. It was actively instilled in the players via George Mumford and Phil Jackson. And probably the most metaphysical point that's made across the series, but essential to the winning of that final championship.
Yeah, it's a huge thread of the competitive streak that we see inside him, whether it's pitching coins, whether it's shooting gammy shots by the side of the court at the practice facility, whether it's, I don't know, playing cards, whether it's even playing up to the cameras on certain occasions. It's all a very, very interesting thing. And I think going into The Last Dance, this is what I wanted to get a sense of, like the psychology of Michael Jordan. And we all know what he's done and the anecdotal evidence of him being a competitive freak at times. But why is that? But what is the little thing in his head that makes him that way? And I really think it is just an appreciation of the present and an appreciation of the moment. And I'm sure having someone like Mumford working with him was hugely beneficial. But I would say Mumford was delighted to have the clay to work with on this occasion.
Well, there is that, right? So there is that, Owen. And definitely, like you say, it was essential, this presence and the centeredness in the now. But like, someone put this up and it was very funny. It made me laugh. That if Michael Jordan went to therapy, he would have scored about 6 points a game. I mean, the guy had a sense of being wronged like no one
it's true
who is making $1 billion a year could possibly have. The rage.
In fairness, BJ Armstrong was a bad man.
But the rage he came out of retirement with, to, like you say, that he engineered these little grudges, but like he came back feckin' furious over how the death of his father was treated, furious over how he was treated when he attempted baseball, furious that he was put in a position that he would have to be a scab and break the strike of those players, and ultimately furious that anyone would suggest that he couldn't come back and win 3 more championships. The rage inside the man, whatever about the presence, getting it to kind of stay in the one box and funnel it towards the thing at the end without, as we say, it going off the rails. I mean, that's the kind of magic of this, because he was as angry a man as you're ever going to meet. But you know, you like, Kieran will tell you more about this than anybody, but like harnessing whatever energy it is that will make you drive yourself beyond what you physically should be capable of doing is what separates good from great, in my opinion.
Absolutely. There is a couple of things we want to get into just to wrap things up. We're going to get into complimentary material to wrap the entire episode up. We'll get into moment of the series in just a moment as well. Is there any last thoughts on episode 9, episode 10, folks, before we get into that? Going once, going twice. Right, into moments of the series. Like, I don't know who wants to lead us off here. There are so many of them. I think, as I mentioned earlier on, I was a huge fan of the Kobe behind-the-scenes All-Star game. I think that this was the greatness of this documentary. It was at its best when we saw new footage from the year that they got this footage from, and I think that the best footage came from that All-Star game, and the way in which Michael Jordan spoke about Kobe Bryant and the emotionally charged timing of that content coming out this year. For me, it's one of the things I won't forget. I think Steve Kerr and his passage in episode 9 is something I certainly won't forget either. Outside of that, there's just a host of other things really when it goes down as the best moments of the series. Ronan, you might kick us off in terms of what stood out to you from the last 10 episodes.
Yeah, as I said, it's difficult to wrap it all up, but those two for sure are top of the list. Ron Harper, I'm going to give him another shout out because he was exceptional and he didn't get much shine after that unbelievable cameo. And
no time.
No time at all. Unbelievable.
Well, Jesus Christ, I couldn't believe he got no time.
I said that as a joke. I said that as a joke that maybe he won't appear again, and he didn't.
He didn't.
Jason Hare looked at that and thought, well, look, I actually thought, just quickly to skim over a couple of points you said there about the flu game, which is something that went unspoken when Marv Albert came out and said, oh, he's got the flu. But everyone knew it was food poisoning. But it wasn't until 23 years after the fact that Jordan has come out and said, oh yeah, that's what that was. So he kind of put that to rest, and he also put to rest, and it was an interesting word to use just off the back of the psychology discussion we're talking about there. Jason Hare says, is it still maddening that you never got a chance to go for 7? And that word maddening, the fact that it's an active verb, and it means he's still annoyed about it right now. That I wish, like even now, if he was offered the chance to go back, he'd probably give it a second thought, you know. And but I actually think my highlight, just besides the ones we've touched on there, is from that win against the Sonics when his father had passed away. And it's actually very famous footage, and we've seen it over the years, where he's lying on the ground with his arm cradling the trophy. But it's more the noise that he's making. He's weeping, and it's being present in the moment on the total flip side, where he's sort of overcome with a sad emotion, but also joy as well. I just thought they captured what drove him beyond that insatiable sporting drive. Like, there was actually a familial thing behind it. They really tied in the kinship he had with his father, and then with the security guard who he sort of molded into his father figure. Like, he had this side to his personality that I think at points in the documentary they were able to shine a light on. So I think that, as well as the ones we've already mentioned, would be a highlight for me.
Jarlath?
Oh, lads, there's so many. There's just so many. I mean, we're talking about 10 hours of gear here that included Larry Bird rapping, the dream team, Tony Kukoc not understanding why he was being humiliated in public in the manner in which he was. I mean, Kobe is like, the death of Kobe affected me and a lot of people I know in a way that I didn't expect. So I would agree with you, Owen. I think that is that one gave me chills. But you know, overall, I really think the highlight is the openness of Michael and the insight we got into the man and his competitiveness, and understanding how someone could be that competitive and how sometimes they needed to artificially engineer reasons to be that competitive over such a long period of time. I knew the footage was going to be there, but I didn't expect those one-to-ones to be as giving as they were, to be as punctuated with explicit language as they were, and to be as funny. I mean, he's funny. Like, he's really funny when he's saying, it doesn't matter what you show me about Isaiah Thomas, it's going to be bullshit. That's the lifeblood of the show. So without that, it's just an NBA entertainment highlights show. So that to me is the highlight.
Just on that, before we go to you, Kieran, that's a really good point. That sometimes I've definitely felt myself getting quite critical of how the documentary, not even how the documentary is made, but what the documentary is. I didn't help things by watching OJ Made in America again at the weekend, and it's just such a stupid thing to do, because what happens is you're comparing apples with oranges here, and it's what I felt myself doing then was kind of projecting that feeling of this not being OJ Made in America onto Michael Jordan himself. But that is not Michael Jordan's fault whatsoever. Like, it is absolutely up to anybody to defend themselves, to come out swinging, to say whatever they want to say about somebody like Isaiah Thomas in the making of this documentary. And as soon as I realized that, the more I was actually at peace with the fact that I like Michael Jordan now more than I did 5 weeks ago. And I know the whole warning beforehand from Jordan himself is that you're not going to like me after this. I like him more, even though I would have had questions over a couple of the elements throughout the 10 episodes. I still think, despite knowing that this is a self-made documentary, or self-produced by his agents, or his people at least, documentary, I can still look past that and say he's given a really good account of themselves, despite all the things that have been thrown at him, even though some of those things have been limited.
So my question to you, Owen, then would be, I'm not saying that Roy Keane is the Michael Jordan of football, but would you watch a 10-hour Last Dance of Roy Keane?
Yes, absolutely.
And I guarantee you, at the end of the 10 hours, with Roy being hilarious in the chair and explaining why he did the things he did, I mean, people would fall back in love with the guy. So, Roy, if you are listening, and I know you are, do it. Let's do a Last Dance, Roy Keane. Somebody get on this.
Kieran, what would you pick out as your moments of the series?
Look, there's a few I obviously already mentioned earlier on the podcast. But Jordan is the highlight for me. You know, I think I loved right near the end of episode 10, and there's the fresh young kid from Wilmington, North Carolina, has been interviewed, and he's Chicago Bulls. You know, he's new, and I hope to go to the city, and you know, I hope to build a franchise like maybe the Lakers or the Celtics. You know, and everybody was probably at home falling off their seats laughing. But he actually said, I hope I can build. And he goes, I hope I can, I hope we can, you know. But he knew as a 21-year-old how good he was, how special he was, how hard he worked. He knew his mindset from how he was able to get through those big moments in college. He knew he was only up. He was getting better and better. He could feel it building all the time. He obviously had this freakish athletic ability. But it's Jordan, it's all the interviews, it's every bit of footage. I'm literally glued to watching the guy when he was on, and he was the ultimate highlight for me in it. And the ending is the sequence, which David Aldridge said was the best sports sequence that he's ever seen, which was that last 42 seconds in Game 6 with his career on the line. As I said, scoring 45 with a crippled Scottie Pippen and a Dennis Rodman who was drinking tequila at a WWF event about 4 nights previous. It's, you know, how this guy was able to haul, you know, and I heard, people often have jibes, like that used to have jibes about Jordan, which I think a lot of them will be put back into place now, but just how he was able to will that team. And he had a bigger heart than everybody else, you know, as well as the skill and all that. He had a bigger heart. And we got glimpses of it. The tears when he's talking about how demanding he is as a teammate. He knew how demanding he was. He knew it was hard on certain guys. But fuck it, that's the way he was going to do it. He was going to give it to you straight because he knew it was all going to fall on him if they didn't win it. If you want to be a winner and you want to get on this Bulls journey with me, you better go do all this stuff. And he just had that beautiful balance between edge. And yeah, he was a brash and he may have been bullyish at times to guys. But all the time, he's just pushing them to glory. He's pushing them to go win things. And those guys were tough. And if you look at a game 8 against the Jazz, when your power forward is a non-scorer, when your best second scorer is done, and you're getting put up to you in Salt Lake City against a really good Utah Jazz team, don't tell me those guys being pushed by Michael Jordan for 3 years affected them negatively in that moment in time. It was the opposite. They all stepped up. Paxson, Kerr, all these guys, they stepped up to the plate. They wanted to do it for this guy. They knew how much it meant for him. And he's just, you know, the GOAT in my eyes before it started. But afterwards, it's on another level.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the level of obsession that people have had with Michael Jordan goes to a whole new level. I think that the level of introduction that people have had to 90s basketball as well is something else as well over the last couple of weeks. Just one of the things we wanted to just wrap up on today, and Jarlath, you might take the lead on this, is just complimentary people to advise to anyone at home who have now got a little bit of the bug on Michael Jordan.
Yeah, well, they've got it. Obviously, people have made time in their week to consume 2 hours of basketball. So there's been a bunch of people getting in touch with me going, what should I watch next? Is there something similar that I would enjoy? There's obviously hundreds of basketball documentaries. I would say that Last Dance is number 2 in terms of the podium. Hoop Dreams is the definitive basketball documentary. If you haven't watched it yet, it's not an NBA basketball documentary, but it is an insight into the kind of seamy underbelly of youth recruitment in basketball in the 90s when Michael Jordan was at his height, and the game was fueling hoop dreams in
Marshall is one of the high schools.
Marshall High School, yeah, apparently.
And that is the reason why I brought this up. I just needed to give a shout out to Marshall. But like, I picked out a couple that I think, well, first of all, Jason Hare's other documentary that really stands out in terms of basketball is the Fab Five. If you haven't managed to track it down, ESPN 30 for 30 is absolutely an amazing piece of documentary, again, capturing the significance of 5 young lads who went to Michigan University and as freshmen started. There's 2 others that I mentioned because there's too many to pick from. Gunning for that number 1 spot is a documentary that one of the Beastie Boys made in 2008 about high school basketball, and specifically an all-star game that takes place in New York every year. But there is for those of you that were captured by the 1992 Dream Team, there's a Dream Team documentary called Dream Team, came out in 2012, and it goes into massive detail of the Monte Carlo game, the Isaiah Thomas thing, and how the team got put together, including how the hell Christian Laettner managed to squeak in the door, which leads me to my third and final recommendation, which is I Hate Christian Laettner, which is another 30 for 30 that I showed to my 9-year-old son, and now he knows Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Steph Curry, and he knows everybody fucking hates Christian Laettner, and that's just a joyful piece. So there's plenty for people to be getting, and if they want to tweet me at Jarlath, I'll happily recommend more.
Yeah, good shouts there. Lads, if anything there, I would definitely echo any Dream Team content. Jack McCallum's book is brilliant on the subject. The Bad Boys Pistons in stock, which a lot of people have seen as well. It's as good as anything around that era as well. Yeah, Hoop Dreams is probably number 1, and I think you've echoed that before on the show, Kieran.
Yeah, Hoop Dreams. Jesus, yeah, I don't know, Jarlath has been very loyal there to Hoop Dreams. It is really good, and it's a different vibe, but
totally different. I'd still have the dance ahead of it though, but Hoop Dreams is unbelievable. There's loads of brilliant ones. Any of the 30 for 30s, the one on Len Bias. There's a very good one on Bernard King and the Ernie and Bernie show, or the Bernie and Ernie show, or something like that. 2 guys from very, very strange backgrounds. There's the Once brothers, if you want to keep it with the Bulls, and Tony Kukoc and Petrovic and Vlade Divac and all these guys with the breakup of the Soviet Union and what it meant to countries out there that basketball is nearly number 1 game ahead of even soccer. But yeah, look, I think any of there's one on Unguarded about a Chris Heron, who's a Boston kid who got drafted by the Celtics, or got traded to the Celtics actually after a year. But that is horrific, about a guy's battle with demons of addiction, and it's you're looking through your fingers at a lot of this documentary. But I follow the guy today even on Instagram, and he's all good, and his life has turned around. But at stages it was car crash stuff what he was at. But that's a really good one, and the one about Len Bias is also a heartbreaking one. But it's around the time they're saying this guy is as good as Michael Jordan. He's coming out. He's maybe about an inch bigger than Jordan, and he's coming out, and he gets drafted into the '86 Celtics with the Hall of Fame squad that they have, and he was the next wave for Boston. And the night he got drafted, he died of a cocaine overdose. So it's an amazing story behind it, the background behind it, and the build up to everything. But it's there's some absolutely fantastic shows out there.
What about you, Ronan?
Yeah, well, Bad Boys certainly up there. Fab Five is fantastic as well. And just on the note of cultural crossovers, like the two Allen Iverson documentaries are definitely worth checking out. So 30 for 30 did one called No Crossover, which kind of gets more into the legalities of how he was sort of falsely imprisoned. And then the Iverson documentary, which people are probably more familiar with, the Netflix one, which Mike Tolan produced, and actually got The Last Dance over the edge because they showed that to Michael Jordan. He was like, "Oh, I love that little guy," so he was up for doing it. So that was a good one. And then so they probably my two picks. But then Winning Time, the Reggie Miller documentary about his rivalry with the Knicks and Spike Lee in particular, which is class. And people might get a little hankering for Reggie Miller after his appearance this week. So that's a good one to check out too.
And also, Ronan, you're always great at putting up the Stuart Scott clip of Michael Jordan's flu game performance. That is, if you're just going for a quick look at YouTube after this, of course, this evening, and you've got 10 minutes to spare, Stuart Scott calling the flu game that night is possibly the best piece of sports broadcasting ever. And it's near perfection anyway. Very deserving of Michael Jordan himself putting in one of his best performances. Lads, we're almost there for this episode, but we have decided that we're that clingy during lockdown that we're going to do one more, maybe rapid fire awards next week. Do get in touch, tweet Jarlath or Ronan or Kieran or myself with any suggestions you have for categories, as lighthearted as you like, really. We'll try and get it out possibly next Tuesday as well, since that's the usual time for Off the Bull, and that will officially be our last Off the Bull, I'm afraid to say. We forgot to mention as well, Jarlath, an Irishman abroad inside basketball is also perfect complimentary.
Yeah, perfect. That'll fill the space for people. Yeah. It's just started today, so it's live on the feed now if people want to subscribe. Irishman Inside Basketball, and it really is just about the love of the game and the characters within the game. And guest number 1 is Pat Burke, the only Irishman ever to play in the league. And guest number 2 is kind of a Last Dance episode, which will drop next Sunday. And that's with Roland Lazenby, somebody I've mentioned on this show again, who wrote what Jason Hare called his Bible for making The Last Dance. And also I interviewed Susan Moran last week, who's the greatest Irish woman ever to play the game, who now is the associate head coach at St. Joe's. And we got into an amazing conversation about one thing that Kieran mentioned about body language, and how she is essentially the scout for this university and trying to find these players, getting into the living room with the parents and convincing them to come to Philadelphia and take a full scholarship to her university, and essentially kind of working as a kind of undercover reporter, trying to dig out the true character of these players that she's trying to recruit. So that's like this series of Run and Run, and there's a load of surprises in store. It's called Irishman Abroad Inside Basketball. I'd really love if people came over and listened.
Brilliant, absolutely. It sounds fantastic. I think
and Kieran's on it as well. I should have mentioned that.
By the way.
Yeah, we've all these great basketballers, and we've got your man.
Yeah, Kieran's on, yeah. We squeezed him in.
I feel that in true The Last Dance fashion, I feel that like we should plug this final episode and just not do it. We might just roll the credits right now. Call it. That's it. Done. We're over. Lads, Kieran, Ronan, Jarlath, a pleasure as ever. We'll chat to you again next week. This has been Off the Bull. Bye-bye for now.